and welcome to Telewizja Republika. Let's kick things off with a splash from Moscow, where notorious war criminal Vladimir Putler just rolled into another term with his usual grandeur, with no sign of subtlety. Putin's inauguration was as flamboyant as ever. As we all know, little men need big appreciation. Now, shifting gears to something much more serious, the front lines, where the battle's heat is anything but a spectacle, the situation remains as volatile as ever, with Russian forces pressing hard in eastern Ukraine. Under the shadow of their nuclear threats, part of their well-oiled reflexive control strategy, Russia continues to flex its military muscles, staging exercises that serve as stark reminders of their tactical capabilities and attempts to at least create an impression that the state is ready for anything. On the ground in Ukraine, the stakes are high as Russian advances intensify around key locations like Chasiv Yar. Their strategy? A mix of relentless assaults and innovative tactics like using off-road motorbikes, quick and nimble, cutting through defenses and altering the battlefield dynamics. At least this is the way Russia wants us to think about itself as a state that is using modern warfare tactics and modern warfare strategies. But in reality, we are thinking about a state that is using only one thing: size, no matter what is the quality of what they use. On the other hand, quantity means quality, as the historical lessons of Joseph Stalin's, the big father of Vladimir Putler, shows in the history. This is exactly what Russia used to win their part of the global wars that they were taking part in, making it possible to win it only if they have a sufficient support from the West, as was the case of the Second World War. It's a complex dance of power and strategy, at least right now in Ukraine, each move echoing through the corridors of global geopolitics. Here at Rachon, we are trying to follow all of this, as we also try, as we will do today, to go through the available data and information about the way that this war, Russian war against Ukraine, unfolds. You can join us here on rachon.com, that's our website, and our Substack account. You can leave us your email. We'll get back to you with our reports about the ongoing war against the West. My name is Rachon, this is Rachon, and we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
And tonight we've got Mr. Jakub Janovsky, who's an open source intelligence specialist. Mr. Janovsky is a contributor for Bellingcat and the Oryx blog, the biggest OSINT outlets. Both of those are among the biggest OSINT outlets on the web. Welcome to Telewizja Republika. Welcome to Rachon. Mr. Janovsky, the people who are following the Russian war against Ukraine and who are following the recent developments and the information regarding the losses, the Russian losses in Ukraine, when they come to your Twitter feed, to your blog posts, can find the number 15,000 equipment pieces. What does it mean? According to the open source intelligence analysts, this is a staggering big number. However, if someone doesn't have the military background, it's very hard to comprehend and understand what does it really mean, 15,000 pieces of military equipment as a total toll of losses of Russian equipment. What do you make of it? What do you make of this number?
Hello, first, thanks for inviting me. In this case, it's a complete set of equipment losses for which we have visual evidence, with exception of few cases where, for example, official confirmation was provided despite no visual confirmation or some other highly credible sources from the site that lost that equipment. For example, some aircraft losses over Black Sea. But in general, it's set of heavy equipment, so we are not counting like light weapons or minor damage to equipment. What we are counting is based on visual documentation posted by either side of the conflict, equipment that has been either destroyed, damaged.
Let me stop here for a
abandoned,
second to understand it better. So what is the level of equipment that you count, and what is below the line of the things that you count? I assume that if someone finds a destroyed rifle on a battlefield or in the place where there was a kind of battle, you probably do not count it, and you probably do, according to your Twitter account, some military vehicles that are destroyed. But what is the marking point of the things that you count and you do not count? What is the heavy equipment and what is not heavy equipment in that regard?
Essentially, from military trucks all the way to strategic bombers.
Okay.
We generally, in terms of vehicles, we have always discounted, or well, at least after the initial phase of the war when losses were much smaller, we don't count any civilian vehicles, repurposed civilian equipment, and things like that. Essentially, it has to be something that military officially obtained and either is military design or purchased especially for military use.
So, for example, I assume that you would probably count a military truck used to provide, I don't know, artillery pieces to the battlefield. You will probably count some professional military vehicles that are used to transport troops on the battlefield, infantry vehicles, for example, but not, for example, the civilian cars that are often can be used by the...
For example, we are counting military drones, but not like DJI Mavics and things like that. The same with vehicles. If it's, let's say, a Ural truck for Russian military, it gets counted. If it's just some confiscated truck from some local company, it doesn't get counted.
Okay.
And obviously, it's all much simpler when it comes to things like BMPs, tanks, and things like that.
Yeah, of course, those that are officially used and recognized as a military equipment. The number 15,000 that I'm referring to goes in line in a way with the official claims and official statements of the Ukrainian military. We've read and we could refer to those numbers released by the Ukrainians, that roughly about, and this is similar to the numbers that are also being presented by the Western military intelligence analyst, that roughly about 6,000-7,000 tanks were destroyed over the span. The Russian tanks were destroyed over the span of those more than 2 years of war. And for a man with no military background like I am, it seems to be a huge number. My question is, looks like despite this number being huge, Russia is still capable of executing and running this barbaric war. What do you make of it, and what do you think about those numbers? Because it seems that the number of tanks seems to be the fundamental one here.
Well, first, our number in all categories are significantly lower. Currently, we list just under 3,000 Russian tank losses, and those include, for example, captured and damaged equipment. But it's still a huge number, and the only way Russia can cope with these losses is not due to any new production, because it's fairly small. But by spending its Soviet inheritance in terms of stockpiled equipment in Siberia that they have been pulling out of storage, reactivating, and sending on the battlefield. But even this storage isn't infinite, and in some areas, Russia is quickly depleting stored equipment, after which it might start to struggle in certain areas and with certain capabilities. The problem is that it will probably take another year or two before that becomes a reality on the battlefield.
So what is the, I know that it's probably a silly question in terms of this is probably the biggest question mark of the not only open source intelligence analysts, but also the real intelligence sources that are not open. This is a big question of the number of tanks and of other types of equipment that Russia possesses in its stockpiles. If we're talking about one more year, does it mean that the total number that we may refer to that could be destroyed would go according to your burn rate 4,000, 5,000?
It's a bit more complicated because as Russia digs deeper into stored equipment, you first obviously take equipment that's in best state. And as you dig deeper, you need to spend a lot more time, spare parts, etc., to fix those pieces in worse state. So, for example, right now, if Russia can, let's say, reactivate 100 tanks per month, in a year it might be 50 or 30 or something like that, because they won't need to just replace few small parts and maybe one major one, but they will need to probably rebuild the whole tank with pretty much all major parts outside of chassis being replaced. So it's going to impose limitations on Russian military over time. And if we reach that point, it won't be like any collapse or anything like that, but it will, in the most important part will be that it will severely start limiting what Russia will be able to do in terms of especially offensive operations, because the defensive operations can be done much more easily with mostly artillery and infantry. And I would highlight that tanks are not the probably most critical equipment that Russia is running down in terms of stored vehicles, but probably BMPs and other infantry fighting vehicles, which appear to be available in smaller numbers. And,
okay, so why is that? And why do you think that those infantry fighting vehicles and other equipment that is using to fight and to transport troops through the battlefield are fundamental in that context?
Well, first, Russia had a very significant number of tanks in storage, but not proportionally as many infantry fighting vehicles. And infantry fighting vehicles are being lost in larger numbers than tanks. So at least with current loss ratios and loss rates, it appears that Russia will run out of infantry fighting vehicles in storage in give or take about a year, while tanks will probably last another year more.
Could you explain our viewers what is the reason for which those IFUs, infantry fighting vehicles, are crucial from the perspective of active offensive capabilities of Russia?
Yeah, they transport infantry all the way to enemy positions during assaults, and they have equipment like 30mm autocannons, anti-tank missiles, etc., which can support that infantry and deal with various threats like enemy tanks and vehicles. At the same time, these vehicles are relatively lightly armored, so RPG mines, even FPV drones can kill them fairly easily, much more easily than tanks. So they are much more vulnerable.
There are also a significant numbers. There's also a significant number of Western-made NATO states-made infantry fighting vehicles on the Ukrainian side here, and we know that from time to time, among others, American-made Bradleys are on the battlefield. Do we know something more after those more than 2 years of fighting of Russia against Ukraine, of Russian attack against Ukraine, about the way those two types of vehicles match each other? We've seen lots of videos of Bradleys being actively involved in the fighting. What do we know about the quality of NATO-made, NATO states-made infantry fighting vehicles and the ones that Russia is using?
In general, what we so far know about their performance is that overall they are more effective than at least all the older models of Russian/Soviet infantry fighting vehicles like BMP-2, BMP-1, or BTR series of fighting vehicles. But at the same time, like I mentioned before, infantry fighting vehicles are less armored than tanks, so even Western ones are being killed in relatively substantial numbers compared to how many have been supplied. But that's the reality on the battlefield. With such a high intensity, combat losses are inevitable. What is important is that in large majority of cases that I'm aware of, crews of these Bradley infantry fighting vehicles have been able to evacuate with either surviving without injuries or with some relatively minor ones, while crews of BMPs quite often simply die when the vehicle is hit.
Yeah, so from the strategic perspective, quantity is quality in the Russian doctrine, but from the standpoint of surviving chances of the troops using both devices, it's a huge difference. Moving through those different types of military equipment, we also hear a lot about the differences in the potential of both fighting sides in terms of artillery. Do you count this type of destroyed equipment, the howitzers, other devices used to fight this artillery war? What do we know about it from your research?
Yes, we count both towed and self-propelled artillery pieces on both sides, but the problem here is that since this type of equipment is usually fairly far behind the front line, we are likely to be able to document via publicly available footage only some of those losses. So while we are fairly confident that very high percentage, let's say 90 or 80% of frontline equipment lost is documented, for equipment that is far behind front lines like artillery, command vehicles, and similar equipment, actual losses might be twice what we have documented or even higher. We just don't have enough data to even estimate it.
Did you ever think, or did you ever try to estimate what is the percentage of the losses that could be documented online compared to the real losses that haven't been or couldn't be documented online. I assume that it's not that obvious that each destroyed tank is being filmed by the mobile telephone of a individual serviceman or soldier or a member of a crew that took part in the fighting. But on the other hand, the reality of the world we live in is that everyone possesses a mobile telephone with a camera, keeping in mind that probably it's not that every soldier active on the battlefield is using it, because it could be dangerous for them as well from the intelligence standpoint. But what is the relation between number that were documented and those that haven't been documented? Did you ever try to do this kind of estimation?
Yeah, there are obviously many unknowns which complicate such estimates, but both sides currently have constantly over frontline areas recon drones that can spot vehicles that have been destroyed in or slightly behind frontline areas. And obviously, both sides have incentive to post other sides' losses. So in terms of things that happen on frontline or slightly behind it, I expect that very high percentage of losses are actually documented, at least in terms of equipment that has been like severely damaged or destroyed.
So do I understand it properly that destroying a tank in that context is a huge event on the battlefield that probably is going to be noticed and recorded somehow and posted online somehow with a very big probability of documenting it?
It's very likely.
That's very interesting.
Because units on both sides, besides usual propaganda purposes, are trying to raise money for things like their own drones, jammers, and other equipment. And they are often using footage of enemy losses as showing that they are being effective with that equipment and to raise even more money for these purposes. So anyone with access to, let's say, footage of half a dozen of Russian tanks or BMPs destroyed, or for Russians, Ukrainian losses, is very likely going to post them either so that commanders can report home that they have destroyed this equipment, which is often rewarded with cash prizes, and often also for purposes of raising money from civilian population.
No, that's actually very interesting, because it shows that, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is probably the first conflict, the first war of this scale in which we have this kind of situation. I assume that probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, that actually wasn't the case.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I haven't seen on such a scale before. It obviously also helps in this case that both opponents are nation states, and you don't have, let's say, a fight between some country and some terrorist organization, because funding those is obviously way more problematic.
Yeah, that's obvious. I would like to have also your say and your opinion about the number of aircrafts destroyed over the span of those more than 2 years of war, because this number was also discussed very often. A couple of months ago, we had a series of downing of Russian bombing fighters or jet fighters of a certain type. What is the total number of planes that Russia lost, according to your assessments?
I will check just a moment. I have the numbers. Ships. So it's 137 helicopters and 109 combat aircraft.
Is it a big number, a small number? How can we compare it to the number of helicopters or jet fighters that the states of similar size are using and have in their disposal?
It's complicated, as many of those data pieces, but in this case, it's significantly more than Russia is producing. especially when you account for the fact that most of these losses are relatively new aircraft, not some older aircraft that were going to be disposed of anyway. And some of those aircraft are literally not replaceable, and some of those that are can be replaced only in several years. For example, the recent losses of airborne radar aircraft, those were not in production, and Russia is allegedly currently restarting conversion of existing mothballed aircraft into active ones. But considering the problems they had with development and building of replacement years ago, it will probably take several years just to replace those few losses, and each one will probably cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So, and then you have things like losses of two strategic bombers, the U-22M Backfire, which are not in production and essentially are irreplaceable.
That's actually also another interesting thing, because as we are following the information coming from the front line, we are not sure what is the precise number of the air surveillance or air reconnaissance planes that were destroyed by Ukraine, because it wasn't clear how many of them were downed by Ukraine. We know that a couple of them were definitely shot down, but do you know for sure how many and what kind of planes that are used in this operation operations were destroyed by the Ukrainian operations against Russia?
We don't know for certain, but I would highlight here that historically there have been very significant gap between what various nations claim are enemy aircraft losses and what were real ones. In many cases it happens because, for example, you launch a missile against the aircraft and it disappears from radar. Does it mean that it was shot down or just dove behind the radar horizon or something else? Usually it means that you actually missed, but it's hard for operators to know for certain. But historically, it's fairly normal that claims exceed real losses by, let's say, 4-1, give or take.
Okay.
And this goes for both sides. Aircraft losses are the easiest one to exaggerate because in many cases there won't be evidence even if aircraft are successfully shot down, for example, if it happens over sea.
Do we know is the airspace over Ukraine? Because we remember from the first days of this war that the issue of controlling airspace over Ukraine was one of the biggest surprises and question marks in the first days of this war, because many argued that Russia would easily gain control over the Ukrainian airspace, and for many months this airspace was defined as contested, as airspace that is not safe to operate for neither side of the conflict. What does the situation look like now in that regard, according to your knowledge, your research?
Well, airspace is over frontline areas is definitely still contested because neither side can freely operate there without the significant risk of shootdowns. And if you look, for example, at currently well-publicized Russian glide bomb attacks, they are so common and relatively effective because precisely they allow Russia to drop those bombs, let's say 60 kilometers away from the front line without getting in range of too many air defense systems and so risking shoot down. I think in this case, the best description would probably be from 1980s book Red Storm Rising, is that airspace over the frontline area belongs to no one, only the dead.
Yeah, to those who dare to fly there with a high risk of being shot down. My final question, probably this is the thing that we have the most precise knowledge about the level of losses, and on the other hand, it's probably most surprising because Ukraine effectively having no navy that could match, at least before this war, we could assess it that way. And actually the whole war was in a way related to the control over the Black Sea and the Black Sea Fleet. We know that the number of Russian vessels that were, as the famous saying goes, promoted to the status of submarine is actually known pretty precisely. What do you make of those things? And what in your circles, OSINT circles, do you make of the things that we have found out about the naval drones, the new techniques or tactics of the naval warfare in the context of what happened to the Black Sea Fleet and in general of what happened on the Black Sea over the span of those 2 years and couple of months?
In terms of Russian naval losses, some of those were relatively predictable. For example, it has been known for decades that either land-based or air-launched cruise missiles and anti-ship missiles are very dangerous for various ships, especially if they don't have very good air defense equipment and very well-trained crews to deal with those threats. So, for example, thinking of Moskva didn't shock me too much, especially once some reports were published about state of the equipment on the Moskva cruiser. But some of the Ukrainian successes have been definitely due to fairly innovative tactics and adaptation of existing equipment or developing of new ones. And so it's been quite surprising how effective Ukraine has been. Obviously, what has played a significant role in all this is that Russia has constantly underestimated Ukraine and often reacted only with some delay, even to known shipments of Western equipment and ammunition to Ukraine. For example, when Ukraine first received Storm Shadow cruise missiles or HIMARS or other systems, Russia only reacted after suffering heavy losses from those weapon systems, and after that they started adapting improving defenses and countermeasures and things like that. But nobody apparently bothered before that happened, even if those shipments were known months ahead of time.
Thank you very much for this report on the level of the losses that you people who follow each and every online information about the war do have. It's very interesting, and in a way it's even more interesting how many information can we have right now because of the nature of the infosphere about the ongoing conflict. This kind of thing actually never happened in the history of warfare, and we are witnessing, and you are a part of this big process of providing the general public with that knowledge. So thanks for that. We are keeping our fingers crossed for what you do. Thanks a lot.
Have a great day.
See you soon.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can join us on rachon.com. You can leave us your email so that we can get back to you with our reports from the front line of the ongoing war against the West that we try to report on this program. This show comes back tomorrow. We are not sure yet, but pretty soon, that's for sure.